any pretrial motions by the prosecution or defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin, Your Honor?
Yes.
The prosecution requests that all jury instructions and stipulations be published to the jury.
Granted.
Furthermore, for the purposes of expediency, the prosecution requests that when evidence is admitted, it is constructively published to Your Honor and the jury.
Granted.
Also, for the sake of expediency, the prosecution requests that all exhibits are granted on a good faith basis for truth and accuracy, and therefore need not be presented to opposing counsel prior to presenting them to the court. We would clarify that if opposing counsel has concerns about the authenticity of an exhibit, they object accordingly.
I'm not sure that I understood that request.
We are just saying that exhibits don't need to be shown to opposing counsel before they are put on screen share and considered to be published for.
Okay, granted.
The prosecution requests permission for our attorneys to either stand or sit while performing direct and cross-examinations according to the space they're in.
Granted.
The prosecution requests to have our timekeepers share screen exhibits when they are shown to the witness on the stand.
Granted.
And for the purposes of expediency, the prosecution requests that the time be paused while a screen share is being prepared.
Granted.
The prosecution requests that any remaining time from the closing statement be reserved for rebuttal.
Granted.
We ask that all rights afforded to the prosecution are accordingly afforded to the defense.
Granted.
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right. Defense, any preliminary matters?
I think that will be all, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, then. Could the prosecution and then the defense please introduce yourselves?
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Skylar Walta. Today, along with my co-counsel, I'll be representing the state of Colorado in the matters of the state versus Avery Becker. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes and the cross-examination of Avery Becker. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Granted.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Ahmad Dar, and I will be doing a direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz, a cross-examination of Taylor Perkins, as well as delivering the closing statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is JT Timmers, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Ms. Kyle Cusack, the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen, and delivering the opening statement. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves.
Granted.
Good afternoon, Your Honor and members of the jury. I am Stella Fenton, and today I will be Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor and members of the jury. My name is Morgan Romine, and today I will be Kyle Cusack.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Nathan Trong, and today I am Alex Cifuentes.
All right. Is that all for the prosecution?
Yes, Your
Defense, would you please introduce yourselves?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Sumi Vora, and I will be an attorney for the defense. I will be directing Avery Becker. I will be performing the cross-examination for Jordan Markowitz, and I will also be delivering the opening statement. May my co-counsel introduce themselves at this time?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Kopal Charasia. I will be crossing Kyle Cusack and directing Taylor Perkins in this case. I will also be presenting the closing statement for the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Alex Gullen. I'm an attorney for the defense, and I will be directing Blake Van Owen and crossing Alex Cifuentes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Nicole Gutierrez, and I will be portraying Avery Becker.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Anushka Odeshi, and today I am portraying Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Annie McDonald, and I will be assuming the role of Blake Van Owen in today's trial.
Anyone further for the defense?
No,
All right.
Your Honor, thank you.
All right, then I will go ahead and administer the oaths. First, the team members. Team members, please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and the rules of the mock trial competition? All right. Next, witnesses. Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? All right. I don't believe we have any gallery members here. So lastly, scoring panelists. Please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. With that, let's go ahead with, are there any matters anyone would like to attend to before we begin prosecution opening statement? All right, then, prosecution, the floor is yours for an opening statement.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Granted.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is JT Timmers, and today I will be representing the people of the state of Colorado versus Avery Becker, along with my co-counsel. This case is one of revenge. It is about a planned burglary gone wrong of a high school student, Avery Becker, who, angry with their mock trial coach, was pushed to the edge and acted on her anger. The people of the state of Colorado will call 3 witnesses over the course of this trial: Detective Jordan Markowitz, crime scene reconstructor Kyle Cusack, and a friend of Becker, Alex Cifuentes. And from them, you will hear the evidence that establishes Becker's guilt. It is our burden as the prosecution to prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty of felony murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. And we are confident that the weight of the evidence we will present during the course of this trial will clearly establish the defendant's guilt. Now picture this: the defendant, Avery Becker, a high school senior who on multiple occasions came to high school mock trial practice unprepared and late, aggressively argued with her coach, Mackenzie Brackman, the victim. This led to her eventual demotion to the B team. This was the first push. You will hear about these events from Alex Cifuentes and about how Becker, angered by her demotion, took matters into her own hands. Becker asked her friend Taylor Perkins to leave the A team so that she could get her spot back for the upcoming tournament. Becker then, not learning her lesson, once again showed up unprepared to the competition, but she won anyway, further enraging Coach Brackman along with the other team members. At the following practice, the most heated argument of the season broke out between the defendant and the victim. Another push. And Cifuentes will tell you how it ended with Becker storming out in fury towards Brackman's car with a permanent marker. When the coach and team got outside, they found Worst Attorney Award printed on the victim's Porsche. Brackman then kicked Avery off the mock trial team entirely. The final push over the edge. Avery desperately tried to get back on the team, doing everything from talking to Brackman herself to getting her friend Avery to talk to Brackman for her, but to no avail. Becker was so angry with Brackman's actions that while speaking to Alex again, she threatened to go and trash her former coach's house, as Alex Cifuentes will show you. And then on March 6, 2020, the defendant and her companion, Taylor Perkins, were not to be seen at school. You will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, who will present you with the cell tower data, and you will be shown why she believes that Becker went to the residence of Mackenzie Brackman at the time of the murder. You will also hear from Ms. Kyle Cusack, who will present her findings during her work reconstructing the crime scene. From that, you will be shown why she believes that the perpetrator who entered Brackman's house was not armed at all. That same day, sometime before 2:20 p.m., the victim, Coach Brackman, was murdered in his house. This is not the story of a serial killer and a murder, but of an angry person pushed to the edge who is now paying the price. It is your civic duty to punish the person who committed this crime. In order for Becker to be guilty of second-degree burglary, she must have entered unlawfully or stayed unlawfully in the dwelling of Mackenzie Brackman with the intent to commit some form of criminal mischief on March 6, 2020 in the state of Colorado. Then, if you believe at the end of this trial that Avery Becker is guilty of second-degree burglary, all that you have left to believe to convict her of felony murder is that Brackman died that same day. We are confident that after you have heard the evidence, you will find the defendant guilty of each count in this indictment: second-degree burglary of a dwelling and felony murder in the first degree. Thank you for your time and attention today.
All right. Defense, your opening statement.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, and may it please the court. Members of the jury, I want you to think back to who you were in high school. Were you emotional, irrational? Maybe you had a little bit of a big ego? I'm sure that sometime in those forgotten 4 years, one of your teachers got on your very last nerve. You may have acted out, or at least considered it, but would you ever kill them? I don't think so. Members of the jury, the prosecution just stood up and told you a wonderful high school melodrama about vengeful pride and tied it up in a neat little bow. That's all it is. It's a story. One they've twisted to accuse Avery Becker, a teenager, of murder. They want to put her in jail for the rest of her life. The stakes are too high to listen to stories. So let me tell you the facts instead. Mr. Brackman was a bad lawyer. The prosecution's witnesses will confirm this. A few months ago, Mr. Brackman took on a case defending Jonathan Rollins, who was charged with murder. He lost, convicted and sentenced with life in prison. On sentencing, Jonathan Rollins declared that Mr. Brackman would die. We have that on tape. On the day of the murder, Blair Rollins, Jonathan's daughter, was not at school. Now, Mr. Brackman is dead, and Blair Rollins is nowhere to be found. The police only investigated one suspect in this case. Obviously, it was Blair Rollins, right? No. Somehow, despite the facts, despite the evidence, the prosecution decided to involve my client, Avery Becker, and accuse her of coldly and viciously stabbing Mr. Brackman to death. Members of the jury, I'd like you to meet Avery. She's a high school senior. She's the award-winning star of the mock trial team. She's an aspiring lawyer. In her free time, she likes to shop at the mall, eat at the Fry Shack, or play video games with her friends. She can get a little heated at times. She makes mistakes, sure, but she apologizes and tries to fix it. She's a good person. Members of the jury, I'm sure you've made mistakes too, but I know that you would never kill someone. I'd also like to introduce you to Avery's friend, Taylor Perkins. Miss Perkins was also on the mock trial team, and now she's a student at CU Boulder. She'll confirm that she was with Avery all day on the day that Mr. Brackman was murdered. And she will tell you that while Avery didn't like Mr. Brackman, she would never ever kill him. Finally, you'll meet Professor Van Owen, a former detective and an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, and criminal justice. Professor Van Owen will show you the gaping holes in the prosecution's case. They got everything wrong, from the way the victim was stabbed, the way they analyzed data from cell towers, and the way they failed to corroborate key evidence or follow up on leads. Most importantly, Professor Van Owen's testimony will show you there's just still a lot we don't know. The police work was sloppy at best, certainly not enough to accuse my client of murder. The prosecution also plans to bring 3 witnesses. First, they will call Detective Jordan Markowitz, who did a laughable job trying to piece back together the crime scene. Not only that, they didn't even question other suspects before settling on my client. All of the data that didn't support their theory, well, they conveniently ignored it, or they conveniently lost it. Prosecution's attorneys seem to even know that Detective Markowitz's statement was too shaky to be reliable, so they're calling another witness, Ms. Kyle Kuzak, just to tell the jury to believe the police. Ms. Kuzak talks a big game about their independent research methods and unbiased techniques, but upon closer inspection, we will show you how their analysis of the scene looks suspiciously similar to that of Detective Markowitz. I encourage you to take both their testimonies with a grain of salt. Finally, the prosecution is going to call Avery Becker's former classmate, Mr. Alex Cifuentes, to the stand. What they won't tell you is that Mr. Cifuentes was twistingly jealous of Avery. In fact, Mr. Cifuentes and their best friend, Blair Rollins, loathed my client. During the trial, we'll show you how Mr. Cifuentes had the opportunity and the motive to help Blair Rollins frame my client for Mr. Brackman's murder. Members of the jury, at the end of this trial, you'll be asked to adjudicate beyond a reasonable doubt. We hold those words in our hearts very dearly in our criminal justice system because we want to make sure no one is wrongfully convicted of crime. My client, Avery Becker, is a wide-eyed, fun-loving teenager with a bright future and a lot to learn. Make the right decision. Don't let these stories ruin her life. Thank you.
All right. That is it for opening statements. At this time, the prosecution may begin their case in chief. So, prosecution, would you like to call your first witness?
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
All right. Detective Markowitz, could you please say your name and spell your last name for the court?
I'm Detective Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
Right, prosecution, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz.
Good afternoon.
What is your occupation?
I'm a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department with specialized training and experience in cell phones.
How long have you been in this position?
So I've worked for the Denver Police Department for 13 years, but I've been a detective specifically for 7.
What is your experience in this field?
I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement, which was a 3-day training course with a high-level certification test.
What about in terms of a courtroom setting?
I've obtained cell phone data in over 50 court cases.
Your Honor, I move to admit the detective as an expert in the fields of crime scene investigation and cell phone forensics.
Defense, do you have any response to this?
Short voir dire, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. Just to be clear, you're not an expert in blood spatter, correct?
No, I'm not, and I say that in my witness statement.
And in your witness statement, you also say that you had the, quote, displeasure of being cross-examined by Mr. Brackman many times. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Because he attacked
Your
her?
Honor, improper voir dire. She is not attacking the credibility of Detective Markowitz in any of the fields that I seek to admit her in.
Defense, your response.
Sorry, Your Honor, this is just a little context. I'll get to the point quickly.
Would you please explain what point you're trying to make with this? Because I'm inclined to agree with prosecution.
Yes, of course. The witness testifies to the fact that they were attacked many times by various lawyers in court. And I just want to make it clear that some juries have understood that the detective work hasn't always been great. It goes to the expertise of their witness.
I'm going to ask that you limit the scope of your question specifically to the qualifications that the witness has.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'll move on. Detective Markowitz, can you tell me how long your forensic data recovery course was?
It was 3 days, and then I passed a certification test.
3 days. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to object to any expert testimony regarding blood spatter, forensic data recovery, and cell phone technology under CRE 702 A and D. A 3-day course is not nearly enough time to develop specialized knowledge on the topic.
I will sustain your objection with respect to the blood spatter. However, I don't believe that is what prosecution was tendering Detective Markowitz in. With the respect to the other ones, I would request that prosecution just lay a little bit more foundation.
Well, Your Honor, under Rule 702, An expert witness only requires either experience or education, which the detective has plenty of experience in her field.
All right, and you already went over the experience and education. So at this time, is there any further information regarding the CDR qualifications?
No, Your Honor.
All right, and what fields do you wish to tender Detective Markowitz in?
Cell phone forensics and crime scene investigation.
Okay, I believe that Detective Markowitz does have the necessary qualifications as she has done prior work and also gone through a certification course. So I will allow her to be tendered as such and just request she don't opine on blood spatter.
Thank you, Your Honor. Moving on. Let's go to the day you visited the crime scene. What did you see when you first got there?
So when I arrived at the crime scene, I noticed a Ring doorbell by the front door. Then I walked around to the back and noticed the body of the victim, Mackenzie Brackman, in the doorway.
What about when you entered the house?
So upon further inspection of the house, I walked in and I walked to the kitchen. I noticed that there was a drawer open, and I noticed that there was a knife block with a slot missing, or a knife slot missing, basically. I walked over to the dining room and noticed a broken plate.
Detective Markowitz, may you please turn your attention to a photograph marked Exhibit 1?
Yes.
And Your Honor, just for the record, I am stopping the time while preparing the screen share.
Okay.
Detective Markowitz, do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
How are you familiar with the scene portrayed in this photograph?
In this photograph, we see the victim face down on the floor with an apparent stab wound in his back in the entrance of the home.
Does the scene portrayed in this photograph fairly and accurately represent the scene as you remember it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Defense, your response?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, then it is so moved into evidence.
Next, Detective, may you please turn your attention to an exhibit marked Exhibit 5, photograph marked
Yeah.
Exhibit 5. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
What's being portrayed in this photograph?
This is an image of the murder weapon used to kill Mr. Brackman.
Does the scene portrayed in the photograph fairly and accurately represent the state the knife was in as you remember it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Defense, your response?
No objections, Your Honor.
Then it is so moved.
Next, turn your attention, please, to a photograph marked Exhibit 7. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, this is the open knife drawer as I found it in the kitchen.
How are you familiar with the scene portrayed here?
This is when I was going through the kitchen. This is how the knife drawer was found open.
Does the scene portrayed in the photograph fairly and accurately represent the scene as you remember it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Defense, any response?
No objections, Your Honor.
Then it is so moved.
And turn your attention to Exhibit 9, please. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
How are you familiar with the scene portrayed in the photograph?
This is the broken plate in the dining room as I found it.
Does this photograph fairly and accurately represent the state the plate was in when you entered the crime scene or when you were looking around?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Defense, any response?
Again, no objections, Your Honor.
Then it is so moved.
Thank you, Your Honor. You mentioned a Ring camera in Exhibit 1. Was there anything of use from this?
Yes, these Ring videos I was able to download, and in them we see a hooded figure enter and then leave the house.
Detective Markowitz, may you please turn your attention to a video marked Exhibit 12. Do you recognize this video?
Yes, or should we watch it?
What's being shown in this video here?
In this Exhibit 12, we see a hooded masked figure entering the back of the house through the sliding door.
Does this video fairly and accurately represent the video that you downloaded from the Ring camera?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Defense, any response?
No objections, Your Honor. That's okay.
Then it is, oh, did you have something to say, prosecution?
Apologies.
All right, then it is so moved.
Next, may you please turn your attention to Exhibit 13. Detective, do you recognize this video?
Yes.
And what do you see in this video here?
In this video, we see the same hooded masked figure from Exhibit 12 leaving the house in a hurry a few minutes later.
Does this video fairly and accurately depict the video that you downloaded from the Ring camera?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 13 into evidence.
Defense, any response?
No objections.
Then it is so moved. That was Exhibit 13, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
All right, proceed.
Next, as you investigated Brackman's body, what did you find?
So when I was looking on his body, I found his phone. So going through his phone, I found out that he was a lawyer. So I initially thought that the murder could have been committed by a disgruntled ex-client. But upon further research, I found out that he was a mock trial coach. And he seemed to spend a lot of his time doing that job. In fact, more than his regular job as a lawyer. So naturally, I followed that lead.
What leads did you follow?
I reached out to the school that he worked at for the mock trial team, and I received contact information from all the students.
Which students did you contact?
I reached out to someone named Alex Cifuentes.
How did Cifuentes help in this case?
Cifuentes provided me with text messages from another suspect, Avery Becker.
Did you manage to get Cifuentes' phone?
I was not able to get his phone, but I did receive screenshots of these text messages.
Why did you need these texts?
These texts show Avery and Alex's interaction regarding Avery's angry sentiment towards Brackman.
What does Avery say in these text messages?
Avery had texted Cifuentes, please.
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay.
Prosecution, your response.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay, as it is under 801 D2, an opposing party statement.
I agree with your response, prosecution, so I will allow this question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Like I mentioned before, what did Avery say in these texts?
Becker had texted Cifuentes pleading for help to get them back onto the team. They also threatened to trash Brackman's house as well. So this led me to look into Avery Becker's phone records.
How did you obtain Avery Becker's phone records?
Well, they claimed to have lost their phone. I was provided with their phone number, which led me to look into their CDRs, or call detail records.
What did you find using these phone records?
So using the call detail records, which connect the phone to the nearest tower with every call or text interaction, I found the cellular location of Becker's phone in the hours leading up to Brackman's death.
May you please turn your attention to a picture marked Exhibit 16.
Yes.
Do you recognize this picture?
Yes.
What's being shown in this picture?
In this picture, I've created a map that would connect Becker's house to Brackman's house based on the cellular data records pinpointing to each tower.
Could you explain what these red arcs and the blue dotted line are?
The red arc is the area in which the cell tower covers, and the blue dotted line is the most logical route from Becker's house to Brackman's house based on those cellular data record pinpointed locations.
Thank you. Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Defense, do you have a response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then it is so moved.
Can you explain why you needed these call detail records?
So these show a clear route from Becker's house to Brackman's house in the hour leading up to Brackman's death. We see between 12:45 and 12:55 on March 6th, Becker receives a text that connects their phone to the tower nearest their house. Then between 12:55 and 1:05, the calls and texts Becker's phone receives connects it to the tower in between Becker and Brackman's house. Finally, between 1:05 and 1:17, Becker's phone is connected to the tower nearest to Brackman's house before it's powered off or dies at 1:20 p.m.
Thank you. No need for the screen share anymore. Now, using your expertise in these fields, do you have a final opinion on the case?
So using the culmination of several pieces of evidence, including the videos, the photos, the route, and the cell phone data records, Avery is guilty without a reasonable doubt.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Defense, your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. Just to circle back, you have been cross-examined by Mr. Brackman quite a few times, haven't you?
I've faced him in the courtroom. It's not in my witness statement that I've been cross-examined. Would you still like me to respond to that?
Okay, and you claim that he took a lot of, quote, cheap shots.
Yes, I did face him on the opposite side of the courtroom.
And you also examined Mr. Brackman's emails.
Yes.
And you found quite a few emails regarding mock trial, didn't you?
Yes, he seemed to spend most of his time doing mock trial.
Yeah. You even testified that Mr. Brackman seemed to spend more time on mock trial than he did his real job.
Exactly.
So you agree that he wasn't a very competent lawyer, isn't that true?
I don't agree that you can make that speculation from...
That's fine. Detective Markowitz, you considered the possibility that the perpetrator could be an ex-client?
Yes.
But you didn't investigate any of his ex-clients, did you?
No, I didn't need to. My lead from Alex Cifuentes was sufficient enough and led me to the final suspect, Avery Becker. I didn't need to follow up any other leads.
So you're telling me that you always just assume that your first lead is correct?
That's not what I was saying. I said the lead that I first initially investigated led me to where we are today. I didn't need to follow up on any others because it was so sufficient.
Just so the jury's clear, the only suspect that you did investigate was my client. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, Detective Markowitz, you say that it was, quote, fairly obvious that the victim grabbed the knife and tried to attack the perpetrator, correct?
Yes.
And you came to this conclusion in your initial investigation of the crime scene?
Yes.
Before you saw the footage from the Ring doorbell.
Yes.
So you didn't actually consider the height and build of the intruder when you jumped to this conclusion, isn't that right?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Defense, your response.
Your Honor, I'm just showing that the detective didn't take into consideration important ideas before coming to conclusions about the scene.
I do think that this question does have some relevance because I think I see where you're going with it. So I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, I'd like to move on. You obtained call detail records from Miss Becker's cell phone provider, correct?
Yes.
And you found that Taylor Perkins sent several text messages to Miss Avery Becker.
Yes, several calls and texts which would connect the phone to the nearest cell tower.
Did Miss Becker ever respond to those messages?
Well, it is unlikely that a connection was actually made. I wouldn't answer my phone if I was committing a murder.
Just so the jury's clear, she never responded to the messages, right?
No.
And she didn't answer the calls.
No, I wouldn't answer my phone if I was committing a murder.
So you have no clue whether my client even knew where her phone was on March 6th.
No, but teenagers always seem to have their phones.
Your Honor, may I have permission for co-counsel to present what has previously been marked as Exhibit 16 and moved into evidence?
Yes.
All right. Let the record reflect that the witness is viewing Exhibit 16. Detective Markowitz, just so that we're clear, Miss Becker's house is close to Cell Tower 12273, correct?
Yes.
As is Miss Rollins' house.
I'm not sure.
I think you can reference the exhibit here. Do you see Miss Rollins' house in close proximity to the Cell Tower 12273?
Yes.
Okay, so just so the jury's clear, both houses are in close proximity to Cell Tower 12273.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Can you repeat the question, counsel?
I was just clarifying that both houses are in close proximity to Cell Tower 12273.
All right. I believe that can be established by the evidence. So please ask your next question.
All right. Isn't it possible, Detective Markowitz, that Miss Becker's cell phone moved from Miss Rollins' house to the victim's residence?
It is possible, but using all the other evidence, including just Avery's angry sentiment towards Brackman in general, Avery was clearly pushed over to the edge and has more reason to be over at Brackman's house.
That's all right. Detective Markowitz, I'd also like you to take a look at the Ring doorbell footage in exhibits 12 through 13. Do you see my client's face in any of the videos?
No, the figure is masked.
What about her hair?
The figure's also hooded.
Do you have any other identifying features to show my client was there?
The call detail records place Becker.
Okay. Was the mask in the video found in my client's possession?
That's not in my witness statement. Would you like me to respond?
I'm just asking if you found the mask.
What was that a question for me, detective?
It's not in my witness statement. I can't respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should just move on to the next question. I think that calls for unfair extrapolation.
No worries. I'll move on. You mentioned that you used screenshots sent to you by some Alex Cifuentes to identify my client.
Yes, I did.
Detective Markowitz, you say you took a course in forensic data recovery, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that it's possible to alter screenshots, isn't that true?
Yeah, but that's unlikely. I received the screenshots and return accurate to me.
You do have training in Celebrite technology, true?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
I'm not sure.
The court is aware that the detective has training. So please just ask your question.
Okay. Just so the jury is clear, Celebrate technology is used to download text message data from cell phones. Is that true?
Yes.
Then why didn't you use that technology to corroborate Mr. Cifuentes' screenshots?
Because I had the screenshots, I didn't need to verify them. Alex sent me what was true to them.
So you're telling me that you're accusing my client, a high schooler, of murder, and you didn't even take the time to make sure your key witness was telling the
Objection,
truth?
Your Honor. Compound question.
Okay, state the full question and then I'll roll on the objection.
I just asked, you didn't even take the time to make sure your key witness was telling the truth.
Oh, okay, I will allow that question.
Could you repeat it? Sorry.
Did you take time to make sure that your key witness was telling the truth?
Could you elaborate on that? On what point?
Did you corroborate that the screenshots were accurate?
No.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, would you like to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just a very brief one.
Go ahead.
Detective Markowitz, why did you think it was sufficient to finish with, or only follow up on the lead of Alex Cifuentes?
Because it led me to Avery Becker, the clear murder in this crime.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be it.
All right, Detective Markowitz, you may take a seat. Prosecution, would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Ms. Kyle Cusack to the stand.
All right. Ms. Cusack, could you please state your name and spell your last name?
My name is Kyle Cusack, K-U-Z-A-K.
You may begin questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your occupation, Ms. Cusack?
I am a civilian employee of the Colorado Bureau of Investigations. There, I work as a crime scene reconstruction investigator. The 3 most recent years, I have worked with the city of Denver.
And what qualifications do you have in CSR work?
I am qualified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, and I have been a CSR for the past 19 years. I specialize in complex crime scenes.
And what are complex crime scenes?
Complex crime scenes range from home invasions, burglaries, homicides, and many other property crimes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Ms. Kyle Cusack as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Defense, your response?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right. I would like you to lay just a little bit more foundation before I go ahead and admit her.
On what grounds?
Just as to her qualifications for a crime scene reconstructionist.
Ms. Cusack, how many years have you been working with the Colorado Bureau of Investigations?
The past 19 years. And 3 of the most recent ones, again, are in a tenure with Denver.
Thank you, Ms. Cusack.
All right. With that, I feel confident going ahead and tendering her as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
She is so tendered.
Ms. Cusack, generally speaking, how do you go about reconstructing a crime scene?
When I reconstruct any crime scene, I follow a 5-step process. The 5 steps are as follows: recognition and documentation, the collection of evidence, the evaluation of evidence, the hypothesis and testing, and then the final reconstruction. I did so in this case as well.
And when did you arrive at the crime scene for this case?
I first arrived at the crime scene after it was processed by the police department.
And for this particular crime scene, what were your first steps in reconstructing it?
When I began recognition and documentation, I created 3 documents. I created a witness tracking sheet, an evidence tracking sheet, and a rudimentary flowchart.
Your Honor, let the record show that I'm asking my timekeeper to screen share a copy of Exhibit 17. Ms. Cusack, is this a fair and accurate copy of your witness tracking sheet, evidence tracking sheet, and rudimentary flowchart?
Yes, it is.
And when did you create this document?
I began creating these 3 documents when I first arrived at the crime scene.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 17 into evidence.
Defense, do you have any response?
No objections, Your Honor.
Then it is so moved.
Now, Ms. Cusack, if you would please refer to the flow chart being shown. Can you please explain to the jury what this flow chart shows?
Yes, this flowchart is a visual representation of how the crime occurred. As we see in the flowchart, the first little box, we see that the perpetrator traveled to the victim's residence. From there, the perpetrator approached the house with the purpose of breaking and entering at least, if not another property crime, if not more property crimes. From there, the perpetrator attempts to open the front door and finding it locked, travels around the house to find another entrance. He finds the back door unlocked and enters the house. From there are two possibilities. The first and more likely one is that—
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative.
Prosecution response.
Your Honor, the witness requires time enough to explain this exhibit in its entirety in order for the jury to fully understand it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to allow this exhibit because she has been as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, so she should be given the time to reconstruct the crime scene.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Cusack, if you could continue.
Yes, after the perpetrator entered the back door, there were two options. The victim was either alerted via the Ring doorbell and security system that he had with the Ring doorbell, or he heard the back door open, which, as we saw in the video, is rather loud, and was alerted then. Either way, when he was alerted to the perpetrator's presence on his property, he went to arm himself with a knife from his own kitchen, and then he and the perpetrator got in a struggle when the perpetrator entered the house. That struggle created scuff marks on the ground, and from there, the struggle continued, and a plate ended up on the ground broken. As the struggle continued further into the house, the knife ended up in the perpetrator's hands, and then the knife was then stabbed into the victim's back in a bear hug-like formation. Then, having stabbed the victim, the perpetrator fled out the front door, and the victim removed the knife from his own back. He then bled out on his own floor.
You mentioned that the Ring doorbell alerting the perpetrator was more likely. Why do you think this is the case?
It is more likely that the victim was alerted to the perpetrator's presence via the Ring doorbell because, as I said, it acts also as a security system. Therefore, the phone that is connected to the Ring doorbell gets notifications anytime there is movement that the camera picks up. Therefore, the victim would have received 3, if not more, notifications via the Ring doorbell system.
And how do you know that the knife came from inside the house?
The knife came from inside the house because in the Ring doorbell videos, we never see the perpetrator carrying a knife, and his clothes do not appear to hide a knife within.
And could you please describe the perpetrator's physical appearance for the jury?
Yes, the perpetrator's physical appearance had a very similar height and build to the defendant.
And what do you think about the defense's crime scene reconstruction?
Van Owen's reconstruction of the crime scene is sloppy. She never went to the crime scene, and she never saw any of the evidence in person. I honestly do not understand how it's possible to reconstruct a crime scene if you never see the evidence or the crime scene in person.
And lastly, why did you conclude that the perpetrator went to the residence with the intent to commit some form of criminal mischief?
The perpetrator clearly approached the residence masked and hooded, which is not a normal thing to wear if you're just approaching a home. He attempts to open a front door, and after finding it locked, goes around to find another entrance. However, I do not believe he was intending to kill anyone because he was never carrying a knife, and he never pulled a knife out of any of his clothes in any of the videos. Most likely it was the intent of breaking and entering and some form of burglary, other criminal mischief, and due to the fact that the victim brought the knife into the situation and a scuffle occurred, the victim ended up being pushed over the edge, and the perpetrator ended up being pushed over the edge, and the knife ended up in the victim's back.
Thank you, Ms. Cusack. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Defense, your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
As a part of this case, you submitted a witness tracking spreadsheet.
I did.
And at this time, can my co-counsel pull up what has previously been marked as Exhibit 17?
Please do. That one was already admitted.
Yes, I understand. I just want it for reference.
Yes, I was just making sure for myself.
All right. So as a part of the spreadsheet, you analyzed 3 suspects. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And those suspects were Avery Becker, Alex Fuentes, and Blair Rollins?
That is correct.
But in your spreadsheet, you only list 2 of those 3 suspects.
That is not true. I list all 3 suspects. In the witness portion, you'll see the second row says Becker, Avery, suspect 1. The third row says Fuentes, Alex, suspect 2. And in the 4th column of the first row, at the bottom, we see suspect 3, unlocated party, Blair Rollins.
Yes, but you do not create a whole row for them.
That is correct, because we never have any, we do not know where Blair Rollins is, and there was never an interview with her.
And so you did not conduct any further investigation on this suspect either?
That is not my job. My job is to reconstruct the crime scene. I create a witness tracking sheet in order to help myself and allow me to explain to others how I came to the conclusions I did.
All right, I'll move on. In your witness statement, you mentioned that you know my expert, Miss Van Owen.
I do.
And you reviewed her report for this case?
I did.
And you dismissed her theory for this case simply because she drew her conclusion from reading your report.
I dismissed her final conclusions for this case because she believes that the victim was not aware of the perpetrator being inside his house, despite the Ring doorbell notifications, as well as the loud back door and I believe the background noise that we hear in the video of the back door opening with the perpetrator entering.
But isn't it true that some of Ms. Van Owen's conclusions fall outside of your area of expertise?
Yes, but that is not what I'm testifying to. I'm testifying to the CSR reconstruction that Van Owens did and how her theory is not only less likely, it's almost implausible in comparison to my own.
But technically, it was outside of your area of expertise to dismiss her theory.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'm sorry. May I respond?
I was about to ask you to repeat the question.
So this was the question. So technically, it was outside of her area of expertise to dismiss Van Owens' theory.
All right, and what is your response to the objection?
I have not asked this question yet. I was just talking about how she initially doubted her expertise, and now I'm referring to the fact that it was outside of her area of expertise to dismiss Van Owens' expertise.
I'm going to allow that question.
All right, I'll repeat the question. So technically, Ms. Cusack, it was outside of your area of expertise to dismiss Van Owens' theory?
Parts of her theory I'm not an expert in, that is correct. However, the parts that I am dismissing are the crime scene reconstruction. The way that she reconstructed the crime scene and the way that she believes the crime occurred does not fit in with any of the evidence.
Excuse me, I would just like a simple yes or no answer. I will repeat the question. So technically, it was outside of your area of expertise to dismiss Van Owens' theory?
Some of hers, yes, not all of them.
Okay. And for every crime scene, you mentioned taking a 5-step analysis?
Yes.
And as part of your steps, you evaluate the evidence?
I do.
And in this case, you did not recover any DNA, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, this is outside the scope of my witness.
The question regarding DNA?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Defense, what is your response?
She mentioned this in her statement about not finding any DNA or fingerprints, and I would just like to cover that.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, please do.
This witness has been tenured as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, and DNA relates to the identity of the perpetrator in this case. And this expert only has knowledge and expertise in reconstructing how the individuals moved about in the home at the time of the murder, not about the identity of them.
Prosecution, I am inclined to agree with your objection. I believe that DNA evidence is outside of the expertise with which Ms. Cusack has been tendered.
May I respond real quickly?
Very briefly.
I'm not asking her to ask whose DNA it is. I'm simply asking her if there was DNA on the scene.
You may opine as to whether or not there was any DNA.
Okay, I will rephrase the question. There was no DNA at the crime scene, Ms. Cusack, was there?
No, there was not. However, there also weren't any fingerprints, and that is probably due to the fact that I do not believe the perpetrator was ever injured and the perpetrator was wearing gloves.
And in your statement, you also mentioned scuff marks. You did not date the scuff marks, did you?
It is not possible to carbon date scuff marks. However, due to the fact that there is a rug outside and there is a rug indoors right near the scuff marks, it is unlikely that the scuff marks were ever previously created. The scuffle is the most likely causation of these.
But they could also be from moving furniture.
Scuff marks are, especially dark ones such as those, tend to come from shoes.
Okay, and the security footage that you talked about, in that you could only see a general height and build, correct? Which doesn't exactly match that of our defendant, Avery Becker.
Objection, Your Honor, compound question.
Yes, defense, could you please rephrase the question?
Yeah, of course, I'll break it up. And as a part of this case, you reviewed security footage, the ring security footage?
Yes, I did.
And as a part of that footage, you claimed that you could only identify a general height and build, which doesn't exactly match that of our defendant, Avery Becker.
Well, when I previously testified to it matching, I did not say exact match. I said it is very similar.
And in fact, you also testified to them being masked and hooded, which would cover any identifiable features in general.
That is correct, but my job isn't to identify a suspect or defendant. My job is to reconstruct a crime scene.
Okay, and so technically you cannot draw a concrete conclusion that Avery Becker is guilty, since evidence on the scene does not corroborate your conclusion?
Once again, my job isn't to specifically decide who the final suspect was and whether or not the defendant is guilty. My job is to reconstruct the crime scene, which I did. Using that reconstruction, the prosecution then comes to their final conclusions. That is the job of the lawyers, not myself.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, prosecution, would you like to redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then, Ms. Cusack, you may return to your seat. And prosecution, would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call Mr. Alex Fuentes to the stand.
Mr. Fuentes, could you please state your name and spell your last name?
My name is Alex Fuentes, and that is spelled Sifuentes.
All right, prosecution, you may proceed with questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Fuentes, can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello again. My name is Alex Fuentes, and I am a current senior at CHS as well as a current A team on mock trial.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about Mackenzie Brackman. Did you know Mackenzie Brackman?
Yes, I did. He was our amazing mock trial coach. I really looked up to him.
And how long was he your mock trial coach for?
He was my mock trial coach for the entirety I was on A team.
And how would you describe your overall relationship with Coach Brackman?
I really respected him. Not only was he an amazing coach, he was also an amazing litigator, and he really shared his talents with the students to make the best A team there could be.
Thank you. I'd like to shift now to your relationship with the defendant. Do you know Avery Becker?
Yes, I do. She and I are really good friends.
And how do you know her?
Once again, she and I are really good friends. She's actually one of the reasons why I joined mock trial in the first place. She convinced me when I was a freshman, which was a really good decision. But we definitely spend a lot of time on mock trial together, so we're really good friends.
And in mock trial, how well did Avery perform as a lawyer?
I will admit that at points she did make things up on the fly, and at sometimes it did work to her advantage. But at the same time, I would say I was more prepared and we had differences in work styles. So at the end of the day, she was pretty good, but not the best.
And was Avery Becker on A team the entirety of her senior year?
No, she wasn't. She was actually bumped down to the B team for a period of time with all the losers. And then later in the season, she was actually dismissed from the entire team entirely.
Now you mentioned that Avery was demoted to the B team. When did this happen?
This happened about a week ago. A week before regionals, I want to say.
And from what you could observe in practices, why was she demoted to the B team?
Well, Coach Brackman and Avery always had their bickers and feuds throughout the season. And before regionals, Coach Brackman actually didn't, from what it seemed, he didn't think that she was worthy of A-team. She never came prepared, she never came on time, and she never had any of her documents prepared, which puts the team in anxiety. So he did not think that she deserved to be on A-team.
And from what you could see, how did Avery react to Coach Brackman's decision to demote her to the B team?
From what I could tell, she was humiliated. I mean, to be bumped down to the B team with all the losers is absolutely horrifying. So she definitely tried to get back on the A team whenever she could. And that's when Taylor conveniently steps down.
Now, how would you describe Avery and Mr. Brackman's overall interactions on mock trial based on your own observations?
From what I could see, Avery had no respect for Coach Brackman. Coach Brackman did everything he could to try to help her and to try to make her the best, not only lawyer, but witness on the team. And she never respected that, and she never even tried. She always played the victim, and she always never listened to him. And there was no level of respect between the two. Their relationship was not very good.
And how often did these hostile interactions occur?
They happened very often. I mean, if this was a TV show, they would get the most screen time. It was ridiculous how much they fought.
Thank you. I'd like to shift now to the practices following the regional tournament. At the practices following regionals, what were Avery and Mr. Brackman's interactions like from what you could see?
They were still pretty hostile, but there was actually this one time, the practice right after regionals, they got into this huge heated dispute, and it was probably the climax of the entire season. And that night, Avery did something horrible.
What did Avery do?
Well, after their heated dispute about whether or not Avery deserved awards that she won at regionals, she was so angry that, we have this little eel of Sharpies that we write down our mock trial ideas on. So she stormed over there, grabbed a marker, she went out of the building, and do you know what she did? She wrote worst attorney award on his beautiful white Porsche. I mean, who would do that? She's lucky that he didn't pursue legal action. So of course she was dismissed off the team.
And from what you could observe, how did Avery react to being dismissed from the mock trial team?
Well, from what I could tell, she was furious and humiliated. If she was humiliated to be bumped out of the B team, she was even more horrifyingly furious after being dismissed from the team entirely. So a few days after that, she actually texted me to try to get back on the team, which I helped her, but it didn't really pan out.
You mentioned the text between you and Avery. Let the record reflect that I'm asking our timekeeper to share what has previously been marked as Exhibit 14. Mr. Cifuentes, can you confirm that these screenshots are of your text exchange with Avery?
Yes, they are.
And how do you know that these screenshots are of your text exchange with Avery?
Because I remember sending those texts as well as receiving them.
Have these screenshots been altered in any way?
No, they have not.
Are these screenshots a fair and accurate representation of your text exchange with Avery?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Defense, your response.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Please do.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 801(1)(d)(2), this evidence is not hearsay because it contains an opposing party's statement, as half the texts in this exhibit were made by the defendant.
I do agree with that explanation, so I'm actually going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Cifuentes, what were these texts about?
Well, she texted me asking if I could help her in any way by talking to Coach Brackman because she knew how well and close I was with Coach Brackman. And I definitely did decide to help her. And when I talked to Coach Brackman, he actually wouldn't have it. So when I let her know that, she said she was going to do something horrible to his house. I didn't think she was going to do anything at the time, but I guess she did.
Thank you. I'd like to jump forward a little bit in time. When did you find out about Coach Brackman's death?
Well, it was actually, I believe, March 6th. He actually never showed up to mock trial practice that day, which was really weird of him. And then later that evening, we found out that, he'd been murdered that day.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. I know that can't be easy for you to talk about. But can you please explain the events that unfolded after you had found out about Coach Brackman's death?
Well, after I found out, I was contacted by Detective Markowitz a few days later, and she called me down to the station to give a little statement, which I did. And I brought up the text messages, but I forgot my phone that day because that battery was the worst. So I actually sent her screenshots of our exchange.
Thank you. Now I'd like to talk very briefly about Blair Rowlands. Do you know who Blair Rowlands is?
Yeah, that kid in my grade, yeah, I know him.
And how often do you talk to Blair?
Not very often. Maybe I would wave at them in the hall.
Have you talked to Blair recently?
No, I have not.
Would you ever do any favors for Blair?
Maybe hold the door open for them. Nothing else, though.
Thank you, Mr. Cifuentes. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, defense, your witness.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Cifuentes. I understand that it might be hard to talk about your recently deceased coach, and I offer my condolences.
Thank you.
You spent a lot of time working on your mock trial role, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I loved mock trials, so I did everything I could to prepare to make sure I was ready for practice.
And you would expect the rest of the team to do the same, wouldn't you?
I don't think I would expect them to put as much effort in as I did because I definitely went over the top sometimes. But yes, I would definitely expect them to put at least a little bit of effort into what they did on the mock trial team.
But it seemed like Avery wasn't working as hard as anyone else, especially you.
She definitely didn't prepare as much, which definitely annoyed a little bit of the team because a lot of the team did, in fact, put a lot of preparation time into it. But at the end of the day, she definitely thought of the team.
And you said in your statement, this irked you, didn't it?
It did. I mean, you're on A team, so I really wanted her to work to be on A team and work to be the best she could be on the team. Yes, that's correct.
And you also said that felt like a slap in the face to you.
It was really, I wouldn't say as dramatic as that. I know I said that in my witness statement, but it did in fact annoy me that she didn't put as much effort into the work that I did, yes.
And you believe that Avery didn't win any of their awards based on any real talent?
I don't think that she was prepared. And once again, I don't think that mock trial is always fair. I think that she definitely relied on the air of luck as well as the looks that she had. And I think that she used those to her advantage in court.
And you even believed that they should have been on the B team, didn't you? With all those losers, as you called them.
I never said in my witness statement that I thought she would deserve to be on the B team. I just thought that she should put more effort into the A team.
And you were very upset whenever Avery was allowed back onto the A team, even though she won 2 awards at regional tournaments and possibly propelled you to a win.
Actually, she got back on the A team before regionals, so she got back on the team before she won those awards.
I believe I did say that. If I didn't say that, then I'm sorry, but that is what I meant. She won those awards on A team.
Sorry, you were referring to when she was dismissed off the team entirely.
So I was referring to she was kicked off the A team and then was brought back onto the A team. She won 2 awards during that regional tournament, which possibly, yeah. So that's what I was referring to.
So could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you would even go as far to be upset when Avery is back onto the A team and wins 2 awards at the regional tournament, possibly propelling your team to win.
I wasn't upset. I was just worried that she wasn't going to win those awards. And when she did, I was obviously surprised because she did not put as much preparation. And I don't think she deserved them because she didn't put the preparation in and because she was erring on the side of luck as well as looks. It definitely put the team under a huge state of anxiety.
And you said earlier that you talked to Mr. Brackman allowing Avery back on the team, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I tried to help her back on the team, but Coach Brackman wouldn't have it.
But you did it very begrudgingly, didn't you?
I at first had my doubts. I mean, yes, I would have played a bigger role without her on the team. However, I knew that the team needed her with that empty space with state approaching. So I decided to put my ego aside and help the team out in the way I could.
So you thought that Avery's demotion was going to get you a larger role in the team?
That was actually a fact that would have happened. But at the end of the day, I put the team first and I realized that's the team with that empty spot. We needed her as state was approaching.
And you were excited for this larger role, weren't you?
Once again, I was excited for it, but at the end of the day, I decided to help her and try to get her back on the team because I knew having her on the team was more important than the big role I would have played without her on the team.
You claim to have some text messages from Avery, don't you?
Yes, I do.
But those text messages are green. On the right side of the screen, those text messages are green, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you know that Avery has an iPhone?
I did, but in my witness statement, it does not specify whether I had an Apple or Android phone. And if, in fact, I had an Android phone, it would actually turn those text messages green.
But looking at that exhibit, that's very clearly an Apple phone.
Yes, but in my witness statement, it does not specify whether, once again, I have an Apple phone or an Android. So therefore, I cannot testify as to whether if she had an iPhone and what the color of the texts would be.
Okay, but if you did have an iPhone, did you know that two iPhone text messages should be blue, shouldn't they?
I believe so, but once again, in my witness statement, it is not specified that I had an Apple phone at all. So once again, I cannot say that the green.
And then when you went to the police station, you forgot your phone at home, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was rushing to get there on time, and that old phone had the worst battery, so I forgot it at home. Yeah.
And the police haven't seen these text messages on your phone, have they?
No, because I forgot my phone at home. I actually told Detective Markowitz about the texts, and she said that it would be sufficient if I sent them the screenshots.
But yes or no, the police never have seen the text messages on your phone.
On my phone, they have not, no.
Okay. And they never even asked to see your phone, did they?
They did not think it was necessary to bring my phone in because they thought that the screenshots would be sufficient, and I did not want to question their authority, so I did not.
And we only have those screenshots in court today, don't we?
Yes, those are the screenshots that we referred to earlier in my direct.
And you don't have the phone to verify those, do you?
No, I don't. I actually traded it in a few months ago because I definitely wanted a better battery.
So you don't even know where the phone is, do you?
I'm not sure. It could be in the ocean somewhere. It could be in a recycling bin. I have no idea where it is.
And speaking of lost phones, you were in possession of Avery's phone night for the murder, weren't you?
For a few minutes playing a game before I gave it back. Yes, that's
right. Okay, that's all, Your Honor.
Sorry, I'm muted. Prosecution, would you like to do a redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Then do you have, yes, Mr. Cifuentes, you may take a seat. Prosecution, do you have any further witnesses to call?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
All right. Then if that is the case, we will move on to the defense's case in chief. So, defense, would you like to go ahead and call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Miss Avery Becker to the stand.
Right. Ms. Becker, could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Avery Becker, B-E-C-K-E-R.
Right. You may proceed with questioning.
Good afternoon, Miss Becker. How are you doing?
Okay, a little overwhelmed, I guess.
That's totally understandable. Lucky for you, the first question is easy. Where do you go to school?
I graduated, but I used to go to Colorado High School.
What kinds of activities did you do?
I used to be on the mock trial team. It was so much fun and I was so good at it. We won all of our competitions and I won tons of awards, best attorney.
That's awesome. How did you become interested in mock trial?
My friend Taylor and I decided to join it for fun. It was an excuse to see her after school since my parents took my phone away after dinner for homework. Turns out I was really good at it.
Yeah, maybe one day you'll be a lawyer too, huh?
Yeah, I hope so.
So, Avery, what else do you like to do in your free time?
I really like playing video games, going to the mall, going out to eat with my friends, just normal teenager stuff, I guess.
Okay, now Avery, I know this is hard for you because you just lost your coach, so I want you to take a couple deep breaths. How did you know Mr. Brackman?
He was my mock trial coach.
What did you think of him?
I disliked him for sure, but he was honestly a good coach, and he got us to a place where we were competitive. I think he may have been jealous of me, though. I heard he wasn't a very good lawyer.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
I don't think he liked me very much because I didn't put a lot of effort into mock trial, but I was still really good, don't get me wrong. He was always criticizing me and my work ethic, but he still gave me the best roles since I won us all the awards.
Now, Miss Becker, despite all of your awards, how did all those criticisms make you feel?
You know, I tried not to let it get to me and to take the high road, even though we argued and he could be mean. I know that I'm really good at mock trial, but I do remember one time when I acted out, I still really regret it.
Now, Avery, remember that you're only on trial for the events of March 6th. However, would you mind sharing a little bit more about that time that you did act out?
Yeah, I remember it was the practice after regionals. Mr. Brackman was being so mean. I was so upset.
What did he say to you?
I just won Best Attorney and Best Closing Awards, but all Brackman could do was criticize me. He told me that I didn't deserve them and I just relied on my good looks.
Wow, I'm sorry. What happened then?
I stormed out of practice with a marker and wrote Worst Attorney Award on his car. Not my proudest moment. I swear to God, I honestly thought it was an expo marker, but it was actually a Sharpie. Who knew?
I see. What did you do when you realized your mistake?
I felt really bad. I still do. I offered to scrub his car clean and to get a job over the summer to repaint it. It was the least I could do. The next day, I decided to go to his office in person and apologize, but he didn't want to talk to me.
Did you face any consequences?
Oh yeah, Brackman was super mad. I got kicked off the team.
Okay, and what did you do once you did get kicked off the team?
Well, I guess I deserved to get kicked off, but nonetheless, I really cared about mock trial. I apologized profusely and tried to have other members of the team talk to him for me, but I guess that was it.
How did you feel about that?
Like I said, I was upset, but I had to face the consequences of my actions.
Okay, Avery, I'd now like to shift your attention to the date Coach Brackman was murdered. Can you tell me where you were on March 6th?
I was looking for my phone with Taylor. We decided to ditch school and go back to the fry shack and the mall the day where we were the day before to look for it.
When did you realize your phone was missing?
Well, I'm not allowed to use my phone at night, so I didn't realize until Friday. Usually I go to Taylor's house to pick her up, and that's when I was like, oh my God, where is my phone?
I see. Did you eventually find your phone?
No, Taylor kept calling it, but we just couldn't find it. In retrospect, we should have used Find My iPhones, but I forgot that Androids also had that feature. Honestly, my mind was somewhere else. I was pretty upset about the whole situation. I think that's why I didn't even realize my phone was missing until much later.
So, just to be clear, did you have your phone with you at all that day?
No, I have no clue where it went.
Ms. Becker, the prosecution has brought up some Ring camera videos from the day of Mr. Brackman's murder. Do you see them marked as exhibits 12 and 13 on the stand?
Yes.
The intruder in those videos, do they look like you?
Yeah, but I mean, tons of people look like that. I'm obviously not saying Blair Rollins did it or anything, but she looks like that too.
You mentioned Blair Rollins. Really briefly, could you tell me a little bit more about her?
Well, again, I'm not accusing her of anything, but she's kind of a weird kid. She was friends with Alex Fuentes, and I saw them on March 5th at the Fry Shack together, right before my phone went missing.
Okay, now Avery, I just have one more question for you. Did you kill Coach Brackman?
No, absolutely.
Question, you're leading the witness.
Defense, your response?
Your Honor, I don't believe it was leading. I asked, did you kill Coach Brockman?
I'm going to go ahead and allow that question because I think that she can testify to what she did or did not do.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, I'll ask you again. Did you kill Mr. Brockman?
No, absolutely not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, prosecution, your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Becker. I'd like to start by talking about your time on mock trial. You were on mock trial for almost all of high school, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
And mock trial meant a lot to you.
Yes, it did.
And you were also one of the highest performing students on the team, correct?
Yes, I won many awards.
But Coach Brockman did not appreciate your talents, did he?
No, he didn't, but he also gave me the best roles because he did know that I was good at mock trial and at what I did.
He was always revising your examinations?
He was what? I'm sorry?
He was always revising your examinations.
Yes, I suppose he was revising them.
And telling you how to perform your crosses?
Yes, but I would often deviate.
And you never needed all of that help from Brockman, did you?
No, I was pretty good at mock trial on my own. I didn't usually need a script.
You didn't think much of Brockman as a lawyer, did you?
Well, he could have been better, I suppose.
You heard that he was not a good lawyer because of his ego.
Right. I guess that's what my attorneys have told me, or that's what my mom has told me. Yes.
You didn't really have much respect for him, did you?
I did have respect for him. He got the team to a level that was competitive, but we'd had our differences.
And he demoted you in your senior year to the B team, correct?
Yes, he did, but I also suppose that I was not working hard enough on mock trial.
And the B team is, in your words, a bunch of losers, right?
I suppose that if that was in my witness statement, then that is precisely what I must have said.
But he had to bring you back to the A team before regionals, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Because your best friend, Taylor Perkins, quit the A team for you, correct?
I would say that she wanted to do that. She did it willingly. She didn't even be a lawyer, so.
Ms. Becker, I'm only asking if Taylor Perkins quit the A team, yes or no?
She did quit the A team, but you also implied that she did it for me. She did it on her own.
That was pretty nice of your friend, wasn't it?
Yes, it was really nice.
Your Honor, relevance?
Yes, prosecution, your response?
Your Honor, I'm establishing that Taylor Perkins has done big favors for the defendant in the past, which is relevant because it illustrates the lengths that Taylor Perkins would go to help the defendant.
Okay, I would just ask that you rephrase the question.
This was a pretty big sacrifice for Taylor Perkins to make, correct?
Like I said, she wanted to do it willingly. So I didn't ask her to do anything.
Okay, and now once you were at regionals, you were very successful at regionals, correct?
Yes, I was.
And even then, Brockman did not appreciate your contributions to the team, did he?
Well, he criticized me, but I don't know if he didn't appreciate them or not.
And Mr. Brockman suggested that you didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award, correct?
Yes, he did suggest that.
This must have made you angry, didn't it?
Yes, I guess you could say that I was upset.
Now, Ms. Becker, you acknowledged in your witness statement that you knew Mackenzie Brockman owned a Porsche, correct?
Yes, I don't see why that's relevant.
Now, you knew that Mackenzie Brockman loved this Porsche.
Yes, he did.
Ms. Becker, would you agree that a Porsche is an expensive car?
Yes, again, I don't see why that's relevant to my witness statement at all or anything.
Ms. Becker, knowing the value of this car, you took a black permanent marker, correct?
I thought it was an expo marker because I was writing at the board. Writing
You
down all the pros and cons from the regional tournament.
It was a permanent black marker, correct?
Yes, but like I said, I thought it was an expo marker.
And you wrote Worst Attorney Award in big letters on Coach Brackman's white Porsche, correct?
Yes, and I still really regret it. And if I could go back and change it, I would.
And isn't it true that Mr. Brackman actually came out to apologize to you after that?
Yes, he did.
But he dismissed you from the mock trial team once he saw what you did.
Yes, that is correct.
Dismissed from the team before the state tournament, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Your senior year.
Yes, you have already established that.
Now, given the importance mock trial has to you, this caused you to become even more angry?
I would say that I was angry, for sure, and he demoted me down, but...
Now, you went home after being dismissed from the mock trial team, correct?
Yes, where else would I go?
But you did not tell your mom what you had done to Brackman's car, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. Why does the defendant's mom come into the picture here?
Yeah, prosecution, your response to that.
Your Honor, if you would let me continue this line of questioning, I'm going to elicit testimony about what the defendant said that night, which will establish intent.
All right, I will allow the question.
So, you only told your mom that Coach Brackman got mad at you, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You didn't tell the truth then, did you?
I wouldn't say I didn't tell the truth. I would just say I hid a detail.
Objection, Your Honor, this is prejudicial.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Can you restate can you repeat the question, prosecution?
Yes, you didn't tell the truth then, did you?
Like I said, I hid a specific detail. That's not me evading the truth.
And you... Apologies, Your Honor.
Yeah, prosecution, I would like that you quickly get to your point with this line of questioning.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you told your mom that night, Miss Becker, that you would get back at Coach Brackman if it was the last thing you did, correct?
I was a little upset at the time. I did not mean those words that came out of my mouth.
And then you tried to get back on the A team by talking to Brackman at his office.
Yes, I did. I wanted to apologize to him in person for what I had done to his car.
And he would not speak to you.
No, and I understand why he was angry. I wrote on his precious whiteboard.
Now, you noticed on March 6th that you couldn't find your phone, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you couldn't remember seeing it at the Fry Shack the night before.
No, I did not.
Now, one of the reasons you joined mock trial in the first place was so that you could spend more time on your phone, correct?
No, I wouldn't say that it was for me to spend more time on my phone. It was to spend more time with Taylor, my closest friend, because it was lots of fun, not for my phone.
Miss Becker, in your witness statement, I believe that you testified that one of the reasons that you joined mock trial, I'm not asking if it was the only reason, one of the reasons you joined mock trial in the first place was so that you could spend more time on your phone, correct?
It was because I wanted to spend time with Taylor, not my phone.
And to spend time on your phone.
Perhaps I could use my phone during practices to contact my parents, but that was the limited extent of my use of my phone.
And so you're pretty attached to your phone.
I would say that any teenager is somewhat attached to their phone, but I don't know if I would call it quote unquote attached.
And after you left the Fry Shack on March 5th, you spent the rest of the day at your day at the mall?
Yes, Taylor and I went to the mall after the Fry Shack.
And not once did you check to see if you had your phone with you?
I suppose I didn't.
And since you didn't go straight home after going to the Fry Shack on March 5th, it is possible that you did not lose your phone at the Fry Shack.
I guess you could say that it's a possibility.
And today you say you think it was Alex Fuentes, who you're not friends with, who took your phone.
I never said that. I said that Alex Fuentes was at the Fry Shack right before my phone went missing.
In your written statement, you testify that you think Alex Fuentes took your phone?
If it's in my witness statement, then I guess I think that.
So you think he took your phone to frame you?
It's a possibility. You can't discount it as a possibility.
Or you think that Blair Rollins framed you?
Again, it's a possibility.
Ms. Becker, neither of those two people vandalized Coach Brockman's car, right?
Yes, but again, I don't see why that's relevant. That was one event in my life. That doesn't mean I'm going to go and kill Mackenzie Brockman.
Ms. Becker, neither of those two people were kicked off the mock trial team in their senior year before the state tournament, correct?
Yes, but Blair Rollins
I have no further questions.
exponentially worse than getting kicked off a team.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, defense, would you like to redirect?
Yes, please, Your Honor. Avery, can I ask you something? Why didn't you realize your phone was missing on March 5th?
I didn't realize my phone was missing because I was upset about the fact that I had been kicked off the team and Taylor and I were spending time together, and I just didn't realize it was missing. It was the least of my concerns.
All right. Avery, I want you to tell me honestly, what did you think of Mackenzie Brockman?
Like I said in my direct examination, I disliked him, but I do think that he was a good coach and I would never kill him.
Okay, so just so the jury is 100% clear, would you kill Mr. Brockman?
Your objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Yes, I'm going to sustain that.
No worries, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, Ms. Becker, please return to your seat. At this time, I'm going to call a brief 4-minute recess because I desperately need to use the bathroom. So we will reconvene at 2:24. Whoops. Okay, about 40 seconds remaining. All right. We are returning. Is everyone here from both teams?
Your Honor, one of the prosecuting attorneys, the one that is going to be conducting the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins, is currently locked out of the room that he was in, and we are trying to get him back into the room. So until then, may we request a brief recess?
Yes, let me know when they are back in.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, can one of you confirm, is the student locked out of the classroom, like the physical room or the Zoom room?
The physical classroom at school. We're trying to get back in.
Okay. Do you have your teacher's contact information?
They're currently unlocking the room.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries.
Your Honor, I believe the prosecution attorney has been let back into the room that was accidentally locked. We are so sorry for the recess.
All right. So all of prosecution is there. Is all the defense here?
Yes, I believe so, Your Honor.
All right then. With that, we are now back in session. Defense, would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Ms. Perkins, could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Of course, Your Honor. My name is Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
All right, defense, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins, what is your relationship with the defendant, Avery Becker?
Well, we both attended Colorado High School last year, and we were pretty much best friends. And we were also on the mock trial team together. I probably wouldn't have done it without Avery because I honestly really loved her. And personally, I believe she's a calm and reasonable, level-headed person.
And you mentioned mock trial. How well did you know Ms. Becker as a member?
Let me just tell you, she was a flawless mock trial attorney. She didn't put in as much work as everybody else, but she didn't need to. She was flawless on the fly. She was just amazing in general.
And how well did you know the victim, Mr. Brackman?
Well, I would say he wasn't the best coach. He made some poor choices for the team. But he had a really weird grudge against Avery for all of Avery's carelessness on the team. He treated her pretty unfairly and they always argued.
And were you aware of any disagreement between Brackman and Becker?
Yeah, actually, Brackman demoted Avery to B team senior year because of his weird grudge that I mentioned, despite Avery's obvious good skills. And then I stepped down as a show of support because, well, she was amazing and the team wouldn't be able to do good without her, which made Brackman put Avery back on the A team, but was still unusually mean to her. But it was not a big sacrifice for me because I didn't really love mock trial nearly as much as Avery.
And what happened after that disagreement?
Well, of course, Avery retaliated. I mean, anyone would in that situation because coach was dragging her through the dirt. He was discrediting all of her accomplishments, but she did deface the coach's Porsche. Nothing more than just freak the coach out a bit, but then he went and kicked her off the team, which was completely unreasonable based on everything else he already did to her.
And what did you do to help Miss Becker after the fallout?
Well, Avery did try to go apologize to coach, but he completely dismissed her without listening. In fact, the team also tried to help her out because all of the teammates loved Avery. They knew how good she was and she always won them awards. So we did text them and discuss it with other teammates, and they were all on board with how unfair the whole situation was.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
All right, defense, your response.
This isn't hearsay because she was part of the people that heard the thing at first, so she is part of the opposing party statement.
Your Honor, this is hearsay not because of the statements made by Ms. Becker, but the statements made by the mock trial team.
I am inclined to agree with the hearsay objection here. Who was the alleged person making the statement?
I'm sorry?
Who was the individual making the statement? Just so that I have a clear picture.
As a team, we all met at the Fry Shack and discussed how unfair it was, how unfair the whole situation was.
Okay, yeah, I am. I'm not going to allow that statement in.
All right, I'll move on, Your Honor. What was everyone on the team in agreement with helping Miss Becker back?
Not really, but they said so. You see,
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay once again for the same reasons as mentioned before.
Do you have a response?
I'll rephrase the question.
Go ahead.
Was there anyone on the team that was against agreement to helping Miss Becker, in your knowledge?
Yes, Alex Fuentes was. I heard they were passive aggressively disagreeing with the unfairness because Alex loved mock trial and clearly wanted the roles that Avery had on the team at the time.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Yeah, defense, could you please lay some foundation as to how Perkins would know that?
They were all at a meeting together, and so she's just simply stating to her observations, and under Rule 701, because this is not about anything scientific, she's making it off of her own perception because she was there at the scene as well.
Yeah, I am going to ask that you stop offering the statements of other parties for the truth of the matter. Alex Fuentes was already questioned and cross-examined.
All right. Okay. How well did you know Miss Fuentes, Miss Becker? No, Miss Perkins.
We were on the same mock trial team, and I saw him around school, but we weren't really close with him.
And going back to that meeting with your friends, where did all of you meet up?
We met up at the Fry Shack, and this was the day before the murder, March 5th.
And did anything unusual happen there?
Well, everyone, including Alex, showed up, and Alex tried helping, but it frustrated Avery, so she walked away from the situation, trying to be the bigger person as she always tried, leaving her phone on the table. Her iPhone is like her kidney. She would never go anywhere without that thing, which just shows how upset she was and how Alex riled her up for no reason.
And afterwards, what happened?
Well, I wanted to punch Alex, but I never actually did because, like I said, I always try to be the bigger person. So when Avery came back, we left and went to the mall. Actually, Avery never picked up her phone before she left. She called me instead, I guess. I'm basically like her second kidney.
And when did you go back for Miss Becker's phone?
Well, we didn't actually realize it was missing until she came to pick me up the next day for school, which was March 6th. So rather than go to school, since we didn't have any like major assignments or tests or anything, we ditched school and spent the whole day retracing our steps trying to find her phone.
And where did you search for it?
I will tell you, we literally searched everywhere, all the stores in the mall, and even at the fry shack where we last saw it, but we couldn't find it. I called and texted the phone several times because I thought that maybe we could hear it in one of the stores or at the fry shack, but we just could not find it.
And earlier you mentioned that Avery had an iPhone. Why didn't both of you just use the iPhone location app?
Well, I have an Android, so I didn't even know something like that was built in, which is like really cool. But like, Avery was so panicked that she forgot that you could even access it on the web.
And what did you do?
Lack of personal knowledge.
All right, could you please repeat the question, prosecution?
Yes,
or
Your
defense,
Honor.
rather?
Earlier you mentioned Avery had an iPhone. Why didn't you both just use the iPhone location app?
Yeah, I believe that there is a lack of personal knowledge here. Could you lay any foundation for why the witness would know that?
Know what specifically, Your Honor?
Why the defendant did not have that app on their phone?
All right, I'll relay the foundation. Ms. Perkins, what kind of phone do you have?
I have an Android phone.
And does your phone have a type of location tracking thing?
Not like Find My iPhone. I didn't even know something like that existed.
All right, may I move on, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do when you couldn't find Miss Becker's phone?
Well, we went back later in the day to the fry shack to check with the new staff when we saw the rest of the mock trial team there when they should have been in practice. Apparently, Brackman never showed up.
And when did you find out what happened to the victim?
Well, I can't remember exactly, but like just around the same time as everybody else, Avery and I found out much later that Coach had actually been killed because we just had no idea what happened. It was really confusing.
On a separate note, do you know Blair Rollins?
Yeah, actually, Alex Fuentes was good friends with Blair. Blair was kind of weird. I mean, she's the one kid in school who'd be voted like most likely to be a hitman, probably a sociopath. Actually, Blair wasn't at school the day of the murder.
And what was Blair's relationship? Sorry.
Lack of personal knowledge.
As to what exactly, prosecution?
Well, the defense argues that Ms. Perkins wasn't there that day at school, so she wouldn't know who was at school that day either.
All right, defense, could you lay any foundation as to how Ms. Perkins would know who was at school?
Ms. Perkins was talking to teammates on the team, and they also didn't see Miss Blair show up either.
All right. To me, this actually sounds a bit like hearsay.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to say that she cannot opine on who was at school that day.
All right. Okay, I'm going to continue then. What was Blair's relationship to Mr. Brackman?
Blair?
Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Defense, your response.
The witness says this in her statement, as well as under Rule 701. This is an opinion rationally based on the witness's perception.
Yeah, I believe I'm going to allow the question for what Ms. Perkins perceived was the relationship. Just bear in mind that this is her perception.
All right, I'll restate the question. Ms. Perkins, what was Blair's relationship to Mr. Brackman in your perception?
Well, Blair hated the coach for losing the case that sent Roland's dad to prison, actually, life in prison for murder. In fact, now that I think about it, Blair being involved makes perfect sense.
And from what you observed while at school, what was Alex's relationship with Blair?
Well, as I said before, Alex and Blair were like best friends. So if Blair's involved in this, I bet Alex is too. Alex took Avery's phone, made some fake messages, which is really random, then gave it to Blair. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch, but
Objection,
it's
Your Honor. Speculation.
Defense, your response.
That's okay, I'll just move on.
All right.
And finally, Ms. Perkins, why are you testifying today?
I'm testifying today because I was with Avery the whole day, March 6th, the day that Brackman was killed. I know she had nothing to do with Brackman's death. Who's gonna kill her for such a small club like Mock Trial? Even though Avery's my best friend, I would never lie about something like this. Not when somebody's life is at stake.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Prosecution. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. You have known Avery for a long time.
Sure, you could say that.
You are best friends with Avery.
Yeah, I would say I'm one of her best friends.
You even joined mock trial because of Avery.
I did. She introduced me to it, and I thought it would be a fun way to spend time after school together.
And you also help her whenever she needs it, yes?
I help her well, yeah, wouldn't you do that for one of your friends?
You didn't like Brackman's coaching style.
Well, I thought he was a mediocre coach. You know, sometimes he made some bad decisions, but we always ended up winning quite a few awards because of Avery, so I thought it was okay.
Please answer the question. You didn't like Brackman's coaching style.
Like I said, I thought he was mediocre at best.
Neither did Avery.
She also thought he was mediocre at best.
In fact, Avery and Coach Brackman did not get along at all.
Well, like Avery said, she thought that Brackman brought the team up to a competitive level, so she liked that about him.
They had many disagreements.
Yeah, it was basically because Brackman was so mean to her and always like dragged her through the dirt. He made her feel horrible about herself.
I would just like to remind you a yes or no answer will suffice. Their disagreements became fights.
Not physical. What type of fights are you insinuating?
Verbal fights.
They had some verbal arguments, yes.
These fights often escalated.
Into what? Escalated into what?
More specifically, one of these fights took rather severe consequences, and Avery was demoted from the A team to the B team.
Yes, actually, this is when Avery was demoted basically because coach was dragging her through the dirt and she decided to retaliate because it made her feel terrible about herself. No one likes being talked down to like that.
Once again, I remind you a yes or no answer will suffice. Avery needed your help to get back on the A team. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I would say so.
And so you decided to step down from the mock trial team a week before the regional competition.
Considering that Avery was an amazing lawyer, like I said, we wouldn't have gone anywhere without her. I knew we needed her if we wanted to do well. So I thought that was what was best for the team.
Your Honor, please instruct the witness to only answer with yes or no when necessary, unless otherwise necessary.
Yes, Ms. Perkins, I would request that you try and confine your answers to a simple yes or no.
You did this to get Avery back. Oh, apologies. Let me restate that. You did this to get Avery back on the team because you knew that Brackman would have to bring Avery back to the A team.
Do you mind re-saying that? I didn't really comprehend.
You did this to get Avery back on the team because you knew that Brackman would have no other choice.
That was not the only reason, no.
So you sacrificed your position for Avery.
I thought that it was a better use of my time to not be on the mock trial team. It was not a sacrifice. I didn't really want to be there, like I said in my statement.
You still did it for Avery.
I did it for the team, like I said, because they would never get anywhere without her. She was an amazing, amazing attorney.
but you never mentioned in your witness statement saying you did it for the team.
That's a reasonable, assumption.
The only thing you ever say in your witness statement is you did this in support of Avery.
I did it in support of Avery. Of course I did. In support of Avery, who is also part of the team.
And after regionals, Avery really snapped.
Is there a question there?
I would simply like you to affirm the statement I just told you.
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Your Honor, let me lay some foundation.
Yes, prosecution, please do.
After regionals, you weren't on the team.
I was not.
One day, Avery told you about the events, rather serious events that happened at one of the practices.
Yeah.
Avery told you that in anger, she grabbed a marker and wrote on Brackman's car.
Yeah, she did.
You agree, don't you, that Avery was pushed over the edge from your observation?
I agree that Avery was really upset in that situation.
Avery never told you she regretted it.
Considering her actions of apologizing to Brackman, which she did tell me about, I would say that she was regretful of her decision.
But she never explicitly told you she regretted it.
No, she didn't have to. She insinuated it through her actions.
She told you the mistake she made.
She did.
She said her mistake was that she used a permanent marker.
Yes.
This was the last straw, and Brackman kicked Avery off the team.
Yes.
Avery was desperate to do anything to get back on the team.
Yeah, she loved mock trial. Of course she wanted to be back on the team, especially for her senior year.
She texted everyone on the team for help.
Yes.
She even went in person to Brackman to apologize.
Yeah, like I said, that was because she was so regretful, and she offered to scrub his car, get a summer job to repaint the car. A lot of things she could do to rectify her decision.
Once again, I remind you, yes or no answer will suffice. Let's move to the evening of March 5th, the day before the murder. You had an encounter with the mock trial team at the Fry Shack.
We did.
And while at the Fry Shack, you claim that Avery stormed off and she left her phone on the table.
She did. It was because Alex was riling her up for no reason.
Now, let's move on to the day of the murder, March 6th. You realized Avery's phone was missing.
On March 6th? Yeah.
You and Avery skipped school to look for the phone.
Yeah, we didn't have any major stuff to do that day, so it was okay.
But you only looked in two places, the mall and the Fry Shack.
I mean, considering she last remembered that she had it in the Fry Shack, and then the only place we went after that was the mall, that's pretty logical.
Avery's phone was like her third kidney.
Third kidney?
It was very important to her.
Yeah, I mean, every teenager thinks that their phone's pretty important to them.
You admit that you could have found the phone using iCloud.
Honestly, I didn't know that existed. Like, I have an Android, so I didn't actually know you could do something like that. It's pretty cool, though.
However, later you realized.
Realized that we could use Find My iPhone?
Let me continue. That's all right. While at the Fry Shack and looking for the phone, the mock trial team came and said Brackman never showed up to practice.
Yeah,
You later found out Brackman was dead.
we did. It's terrible.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, defense, would you like to perform a redirect?
A brief redirect, Your Honor. Miss
Go
Perkins.
ahead.
Sorry, Miss Perkins, from what you know about Avery, would she do this crime?
Avery is definitely not irrational enough to commit murder. Like I said, she was a very level-headed person from my observations, and she was calm and reasonable, always tried to be the bigger person in arguments and situations.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Perkins, you may return to your seat. Defense, do you have any further witnesses you would like to call?
Yes, the defense would like to call Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right. Go ahead. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
All right.
What do you, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just about to tell you to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. And what do you do for a living?
I am a private investigator and a professor.
And what did you get your education in?
I have a master's degree in criminal justice from Ashford University. I also have an English degree.
How did you start in law enforcement?
I served as a member of the Aurora Police Department for a short period in 2005, and beyond that, I've done a lot of different work.
And could you explain to the jury what that work was?
Sure. So I've worked as a school resource officer, a private security guard, and now a private investigator. So I, work on cases like this. And I also teach a class at CU Denver.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on what that class is about and where, yeah.
Sure. So I started teaching police practices at the Community College of the Rockies. And then a little bit after that point, I started teaching a course at CU Denver on police practices and social justice, which I've taught for about 5 years now.
And then what's your previous experience as an expert?
Sure. I've been admitted as an expert in the U.S. District Court for the districts of Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, as well as state courts for Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico. And I've been accepted by these various courts as an expert in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, cell tower analyses 5 times, and in general police investigation tactics 12 times. And I've consulted on ultimately more than 100 cases.
And to sum it up, what areas have you testified as an expert in?
Sure. I've testified as an expert in the areas of police practices, use of force, false arrests, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analyses, and general police investigation tactics.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I would like to admit Professor Van Owen as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics due to her abundance of expertise, knowledge, and/or education in these areas.
All right, defense, your response, or prosecution, your response.
Your Honor, I admit that the witness has sufficient experience in those fields. However, I would request that she refrain from testifying about call detail records as the sufficient foundation has not been laid that she has understanding or expertise about these specific records.
Defense, would you like to lay any further foundation with respect to her experience with cell phone records?
I would just like to say that falls under the scope of cell tower analysis, which I would like to admit her as an expert in.
Can you lay some foundation for her expertise in cell tower analysis?
Yes, Your Honor. So what's your experience as an expert in cell tower analysis specifically?
Sure. So I've testified as an expert in cell tower analyses 5 times in various courts. And all police officers are trained to do cell tower analysis, which includes call data records. And also in my teaching, if I'm teaching police practices, we can assume that I am also teaching cell data records and cell tower analysis.
Your Honor, I ask that Blake Van Owen is allowed to testify to call data records because of the experience and expertise I have laid the foundation for.
Prosecution, at this point, do you have any response?
No response, Your Honor.
All right, then I am actually going to go ahead and allow her to be tendered in the field of cell tower analysis.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Professor Van Owen, how would you prepare for today's trial?
Like all of my cases, I look at the initial reports. So those were the reports of Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak.
And what's your expert opinion of Detective Markowitz's report?
Right. Unfortunately, Detective Markowitz is a victim of the police system as a whole. She hasn't been properly trained to collect a lot of evidence, and she's also probably fairly overworked. So this report is rushed and missed a lot of key details that do contribute to today's trial.
And what is your expert opinion of Kyle Kuzak's findings?
Sure. Kyle Kuzak seemed to be heavily influenced by Detective Markowitz, which in police practices is not great. We need to find different, we need to be led by the evidence, not by each other. And therefore, I do struggle to find the veracity of Kuzak's findings in today's trial.
And the prosecution mentioned some scuff marks on the floor. What do they mean to this trial?
They don't mean anything. Scuff marks can't be carbon dated, so we can't actually trace the origin of these scuff marks. So if they did indicate a struggle, we cannot say that conclusively. We could also say that maybe Mr. Brackman moved some furniture around a few weeks prior to his death. We have no idea.
And they also talked about the knife. What does that knife show in this trial?
Again, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't match the style, brand, or dimensions of any other knives in Mr. Brackman's possession. So the evidence that Mr. Brackman used the knife to attempt to defend himself feels very sloppy.
And you were talking about the incident of the murder. How do you believe Mr. Brackman was killed?
Based off of the autopsy reports and Detective Markowitz's findings, I do believe that it's a slightly different theory than what the prosecution entered today. So they supposed that the killer and Mr. Brackman engaged in a bit of a scuffle, and then so I'm going to do a brief motion that is going to be difficult over Zoom, so I apologize. They report that the knife was held over and stabbed into his shoulder.
And why is this?
Well, so they report this because they think that there was a struggle, but in reality, this is simply not the case. In my opinion, the knife was held in a similar motion to, if you're a movie buff, like the shower scene in Psycho, where it was stabbed down and hard. And this would make sense if Mr. Brackman was seated and the killer came up behind him and stabbed him in the back. It just makes more sense.
And you talked about the intruder getting behind Mr. Brackman and stabbing him. How could this have happened?
So the prosecution again reported that the Ring doorbell had notifications, and thus Mr. Brackman was aware of the killer, but we have no idea whether or not these notifications were turned on, so we can't confirm them for certain.
The prosecution entered Exhibit 16 into evidence. Could you take a look at that?
Absolutely.
And then could you explain how the cell towers shown in the exhibit work?
Sure. So the prosecution made it sound confusing. Don't worry, I'll break it down. Basically, each sector responds to a particular antenna mounted on the cell tower. As such, it's possible to identify which sector.
Your Honor, I would request that the opposing counsel display the exhibit for the jury and my co-counsel to see.
Yes, please do, defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. Oh, my co-counsel is sharing it. Exhibit 16, co-counsel. Thank you. So to restate my question, what do these cell towers mean in this exhibit?
Right, so each cell tower actually covers about a 38 square mile location and doesn't function like GPS. So we can, say that the phone did ping in one section of the antenna, but cell tower communications between a phone isn't always that direct. sometimes phones connect to other sectors and thus aren't in direct communication with the sector that is displayed in this map.
Okay. And could we have known more about the cell phone data presented in this case?
I would have liked to seen Miss Perkins's records to verify where she was, just to see if that was found similar to the story that Miss Perkins and Miss Becker provided to us today. But again, the prosecution didn't do their full and complete job.
But what can the cell phone data show us in this case?
It can show us that Miss Becker did receive several phone calls from Miss Perkins. At this time, however, none of them were received.
And was the phone possibly lost?
The phone was
Objection, Your Honor, leading the witness.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and sustain that objection. Could you please rephrase the question?
Yes, Your Honor. Both Blair do you remember both Blair or Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins testifying to the phone being lost?
Yes, there was testimony regarding whether or not the phone was in Miss Becker's possession, and testimony indicated that it wasn't, and therefore the cell data records here don't actually determine Miss Becker's location at the time of the crime.
Is it possible someone could have taken it?
It is possible that someone could have taken it. More
Objection, Your Honor,
specifically,
speculation, lack of personal knowledge.
Defense, your response.
My witness is just offering up an alternate theory to the prosecution. I will explain a little bit more in the next question about why this question makes sense.
I do believe that the way you're asking it is a fair question. So I just want to make it clear that this is just a possibility, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, I will allow you to proceed with the questioning.
And so who could have taken the phone?
I do believe that it could have been Blair Rollins. That was a potential suspect that I think that the police should have looked into more. Blair was also absent from school the day of March 6th, and Blair had a much stronger motive than Miss Becker did.
And what was that motive?
Sure. Could I also request that defense counsel please stop screen sharing? I can't see my attorney. So I know a little bit about Miss Blair Rollins because Jonathan Rollins was an ex-client of Mr. Brackman.
And do you have information in the court proceedings of Jonathan Rollins?
Yes, I do. There was a recording of Jonathan Rollins during his court proceedings. This was a public record.
And Your Honor, I'd like to play a brief recording.
Yes, is this something that you're planning on adding into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
So after hearing that recording, Your Honor, I'd like to admit this recording into evidence.
I feel as though a lack of foundation has been laid to admit this recording into evidence.
I think I'm just going to move on in the interest of time. Was there any DNA at the scene of the crime?
There was not.
Was there any identification of the suspect through the Ring doorbell?
There was not.
Was there any evidence pointing to our client Avery Becker at Mr. Brackman's house on the day of the murder, time of the murder?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, prosecution, your cross-examination.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Proceed.
It's true that you never visited the crime scene.
That's actually not my job in this case, so no.
So then all of the physical evidence that you relied on was photographic and videographic evidence that was obtained by the police.
Yes, if the jury is expected to come to a conclusion based off of the evidence provided today, then I can as well.
I would request that you limit your answers to a yes or a no.
I will try to do so.
Thank you. Let the record show that I am requesting that my timekeeper display the video marked as Exhibit 12.
I am sorry. I am doing it right now.
Professor Van Owen, do you agree that the door in this video makes noise?
Yes.
And your theory of the case is that the victim stayed seated at the kitchen table until the intruder stabbed him.
Yes.
And do you remember earlier in this trial when Detective Markowitz testified that the phone of Mackenzie Bracken was found on his body?
Yes.
Now let's move on to your investigation. It's true that you called the police investigation sloppy.
Yes. They also called my investigation sloppy.
And you also believe that they came to an easy conclusion.
Yes.
But it's true, isn't it, that you came to a predetermined conclusion yourself?
Not necessarily.
Let the record show that I am asking my timekeeper to display an document that has previously been marked as Exhibit 20.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Let the record show that I am requesting my timekeeper display Exhibit 20.
Thank you.
Professor Van Owen, do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Is this the report that you created for this case?
Yes.
Was this created in the ordinary scope of your business?
Yes.
And did you create this document at or around the time that you began working on this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 20 into evidence.
All right, defense, do you have any response?
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay. Police reports police reports are hearsay.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead, counsel.
Sufficient foundation has been laid that this qualifies as an exception to hearsay under 8036 as a business record.
Yeah, and I do not believe that this is a police report, as this was an independent investigation. So for that purpose, I am going to allow this into the record.
Now, Professor Van, may my timekeeper continue displaying that? Thank you very much. Professor Van Owen, if you could please turn your attention to the first sentence after the first paragraph. In it, you state, quote, "I have been asked to offer the following opinions on behalf of the defense in this case."
Mm-hmm.
Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And then you go on to say the three opinions you have been asked to present are that Mackenzie Bracken was surprised. Becker, there's not sufficient evidence that Becker was at the crime scene, and that the prosecution's case is not methodologically sound. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's virtually no evidence in today's case.
So then the defense did ask you to present these in court today.
Sorry, you were hired to work today, correct? I was also hired to work today. This was my job.
Yes, you were hired by the defense to perform this investigation.
Why would I be hired by the prosecution when I don't agree with any of their methods?
Well, you did not, but isn't it true that you were not aware of the prosecution's opinion on this case until after the defense requested that you investigate?
Exactly. I investigated, came to my conclusion, and it did differ from the prosecution's conclusion in this case.
Your Honor, I would request that you instruct the witness to only answer my questions with a yes or a no.
Yes, witness, please try to keep your answers brief, preferably to a yes or a no.
Yes, Your Honor.
So to be clear, the defense did hire you for this case.
Yes.
And that was before you began your investigation.
I wouldn't investigate if I wasn't hired to do so.
Thank you. The timekeeper can stop the screen share. Now, you also think that Detective Markowitz should have looked into more phone records than just those of Avery Becker's phone.
Yes.
But it's true, isn't it, that you didn't look into these cell phone records either?
It's not my job. In this case, I do not have the burden of proof.
But it's true that it could have helped your case.
It could have.
And it's also true.
Burden of proof.
It is also true that you only successfully interviewed two people, Taylor Perkins and Avery Becker.
Yes.
And they were interviewed together.
Yes.
And these two people are both defense witnesses, correct?
Yes.
And also, you have only ever testified for the defense in court.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Prosecution, your response.
Your Honor, through this line of questioning, I am trying to display a bias of Professor Van Owen in favor of the defense and against the police.
I'm going to agree with the relevance objection here. I think that the past cases that she has worked on do not have a bearing on this current case.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Professor Van Owen, you charge $225 an hour, correct?
Yes.
And in this case, you've made just under $7,000 to date.
Objection, Your Honor, again, relevance?
Your Honor, may I tender an offer of proof?
Yes.
Through this line of questioning, I plan to elicit testimony about how much the professor charges per hour, how much she has charged in this case, and from that determine how many hours she has worked on this case.
Okay, I do believe that the thoroughness of the investigation is relevant, so I will allow this line of questioning.
So to repeat, you have made just under $7,000 to date.
I believe so.
And let the record show that 7,000 divided by 225 is just about 31 hours. So then you have worked 31 hours, just under a day and a half, in fact, on a case that you claim the police did not spend enough time on.
Yes. Do you have the hours that Detective Markowitz worked on this case?
No, I do not. Now let's talk about Alex Fuentes. You think that Alex Fuentes faked the text messages, correct?
Yes.
And then you're trusting the defendant, Avery Becker, more than you're trusting the investigation of the police.
Yes, because the police work was sloppy, inefficient, reckless, dangerous.
And you consider yourself a check on the power of the police.
Who's going to be?
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Defense, I do not believe you have sufficient time for a redirect, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, then, with that, Ms. Van Owen, you may return to your seat. And yes, and prosecution, I believe we are opening the floor for your closing statement.
Yes, just for the record, I would just like to note that any time that is left over from the closing be used for the rebuttal, if that is all right with you, Your Honor.
Granted.
Thank you. I shall begin. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here today is an example of revenge. We see Avery Becker pushed to the edge. We have met the burden of proof, and we have shown you that Avery Becker is guilty of this heinous act of second-degree burglary and first-degree felony murder beyond a reasonable doubt. As you have heard from multiple witnesses today, Avery Becker is a rash, hot-headed person, and they rarely give a second thought to their actions, as we've heard from both Alex Fuentes and Taylor Perkins, Avery's close friends. On top of this, these dramatic and over-the-top pranks, if you could even call them that, are a habit for Avery. They admitted this. Not only has she committed numerous so-called pranks on Mackenzie Brackman, she even went as far as vandalizing Brackman's car. We wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Brackman's gracious acts of not pressing charges. Now, instead of pressing charges, Brackman took the merciful route and kicked Avery off the team, a seemingly inconsequential result in comparison. But that was not enough for Avery Becker. They felt they were unjustly treated and decided to retaliate. Avery then texted Alex, threatening to trash Brackman's house. As you heard the experts talk about, it would only seem to be someone of Avery's caliber and behavior, as we see with the car, to do such drastic measures over being simply kicked off the mock trial team. And along with her accomplice Taylor lied to keep her best friend, who she would do anything for, safe from the eyes of justice. Taylor would go to such measures for Avery, including how she willingly dropped mock trial for Avery's sake. And let's think here. Mock trial is no easy task. It is one that takes severe dedication and commitment. And for Taylor to simply throw all of that away for the sake of Avery really shows us her character, does it not? You cannot trust Taylor Perkins' testimony. Now, before we continue on to the investigation, we will address the ridiculous claims of the defense and especially Van Owen. They suggest that this was a lousy investigation, yet fail to see the irony in their own reasoning. Van Owen was hired for the sake of creating a poorly put together story, and in reality, their testimony and report seek to manipulate you. Van Owen's job is no more than always being on the police department's opposing the police department, purely biased, all smoke and mirrors and no substance. Our job as the prosecution is to meet the burden of proof. And here, Van Owen seeks to raise doubt that is quite unreasonable. Now, let's move on to the day of the murder, March 6th, 2020, where through Detective Markowitz and her expert testimony on the cell phone data, we can track Avery's phone to the home of Brackman, Mackenzie Brackman's home, a place where he should be able to relax and feel safe. However, for Brackman, it was not as such. Avery Becker, after attempting to enter through the front door as we see on the Ring videos, feloniously broke into the house from the back, unarmed and with the intent to cause criminal mischief. Once again, going back to the text reviewed by our experts. We then see through Cusack's testimony that the victim was alerted to the intruder. In fear of his life, looking for any way to defend himself, he grabbed the knife, in turn leaving the knife drawer open and defended himself from the intruder. In the process of such a vile act of breaking in, Brackman was killed while Avery was still there. The evidence demonstrates that Avery unquestionably was responsible for these gross undertakings leading to the death of Brackman, proving without a doubt that Avery is indeed guilty. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have worked hard to present you unquestionable evidence, and now it is your job to do the right thing. Return a verdict that Avery Becker is guilty of the crimes charged. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
With that, it looks like prosecution did reserve some time. So now I will open the floor to defense for closing statements.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start. May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. We are here today because Mr. Mackenzie Brackman suffered an unfortunate fate. He became the victim of a burglary gone bad, and the guilty party, supposedly my client, Miss Avery Becker. The prosecution is pretending that Mr. Brackman's murder is like a 3-scene play, but this is reality, not fiction. Now, I would like to take a moment to remind you of one fact, a fact that the prosecution is unable to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. This case has an unidentifiable culprit. Today, you heard from 3 witnesses on the defense. First, Miss Avery Becker, the innocent high school student who testified today that mock trial was her life. But unfortunately, due to Brackman's prejudices against her, he demoted his star attorney. Admittedly, she was upset, as anyone would be, and made the mistake of defacing his car, which she repents immensely. Members of the jury, she is simply human, a teenager who may occasionally have been late, but not enough to receive the treatment that she did nor the accusations currently against her. You also heard from Taylor Perkins, who corroborated Ms. Becker's alibi. She testified to Ms. Becker's reasonable personality and all the team happenings. Her testimony included in vivid detail where and why the two friends spent the day of the murder searching for Ms. Becker's phone, the phone that was likely taken the night before at the Fry Shack. Ms. Perkins also spoke to how Alex and Blair Rollins are close friends, and that Blair wasn't even at school the day of March 6th. She is an honest person and would never lie on the stand, not when a life is at stake. And lastly, you heard the testimony of Ms. Blake Van Owen, an expert in many things, including cell tower analysis. In her work during this case, she discovered that the cell tower data presented by the prosecution is unreliable and misunderstood, just like the quality of work from the prosecution's experts in this case. Additionally, she brought to light Jonathan Rollins' case that Mr. Brackman failed to win and convicted that man of murder. His child, Blair Rollins, may very well have taken the revenge for that conviction. Today, prosecution has also presented 3 witnesses. Their first expert, Detective Jordan Markowitz, testified to having an unbiased approach to this case, despite having previous negative encounters with the victim. Additionally, she herself said that she didn't investigate more than one suspect, nor did she corroborate suspicious text screenshots that she used as evidence. She then continued to state that it is possible that Blair was in possession of Ms. Becker's phone. We also heard from a second prosecution expert, Ms. Kyle Cusack, who dismissed Van Owens' theory even though it was outside her area of expertise. And despite her claim that Avery Becker had the same build as the perpetrator, she herself said that the intruder's baggy outfit covered any identifiable qualities. So Ms. Cusack cannot with full certainty nor proof claim that the defendant is guilty in this case. And lastly, Alex Cifuentes himself spoke today. They claimed to be very good friends with Avery, but is here testifying against Ms. Becker, evidence to his vendetta against her. He also believed that Ms. Becker did not deserve a spot on the A team for mock trial. This case has a significant lack of concrete evidence, none of which even directly point to my client, from the culprit having just a general build to no DNA or fingerprints found at the crime scene. Ms. Becker was apprehended on speculation, when in fact evidence points to others far more guilty than my client, namely Blair Rollins and their accomplice Mr. Cifuentes, both of whom had the motive of hate, which resulted in a victim and a framed innocent student. Today, my co-counsel and I have represented the defendant on 2 counts, murder in the first degree and second degree burglary. The prosecution has attempted to prove every element, including the second element, that stipulates that my client committed the crime at the place charged on the day charged. But today, evidence has shown that Ms. Becker wasn't even remotely near the scene of the crime on March 6th, thus invalidating even the possibility of all the other elements occurring. Today, members of the jury, you have met Avery Becker, a sweet, innocent student. Prosecution may claim that she went, quote, over the edge, but murder is a heavy charge, and to be guilty, Avery would have had to break into her coach's house and kill him in cold blood. But members of the jury, I would like to ask you one thing. Why would my client, after being admitted into college, jeopardize her future over mock trial? Would you jeopardize your future over mock trial? Putting it simply, Ms. Becker had no motive and no relationship to the victim other than simply being a mock trial student. But Blair and Alex, on the other hand, did. You were all teenagers once. You were rash and unreasonable and may occasionally make mistakes, but you would never kill someone, and neither would my client, Avery Becker. Your jury's instructions stipulate that for every element of the accused crimes, if the prosecution has failed to prove any one or more of the elements of each crime beyond a reasonable doubt, and after taking into account the lack of evidence in the case, we, the defense, implore you to find that the defendant, Avery Becker, is not guilty. Thank you for your time and attention throughout this trial.
All right, prosecution, your rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. I will begin. The defense argue that we have no way of proving it was Avery Becker. Yet the proof is undeniable. We have shown phone records. We have shown the text messages. To deny this would be nothing but negligence. The only thing the defense have done this whole time, neglecting glaring and obvious facts. They don't even know. They don't even understand Cusack's role in this investigation. Cusack was not here to prove it was Avery Becker. They were here to prove that Avery Becker was guilty of the crimes charged. They go as to many things, talking about what type of person Avery was, but simply The law does not care about those things. The law cares about what is right and wrong. The law does not care about how good of a person you claim to be. Thank you, Your Honor. That will be it.
All right. I believe that is all for closing arguments then. With that, this case will be taken to the jury for their verdict. Court is adjourned. Monitor, anything to say?
Sorry. You guys can do comments from the scoring or the judge for your team at this time. And then we can wrap it up after the score sheets are all sent in.
All right. Scorers, if you want to go ahead and give your feedback.
Sure, I can start just because I've turned mine in. Great job, everybody. I know it's been a really long day and everybody's tired, and way to stick to it to the very end. Nice work. I think that there's every possibility. This is the regional, right? There's another potential tournament after this for some folks. I think. I don't know. I'm going to go on that assumption. If anybody is doing mock trial in a future year or going on to a subsequent tournament, I think my one note for an opportunity for improvement would be that mock trial is weird because you can be an attorney in one round and a witness in the next, but you're going to be better at both roles when you stay in that role. So when you're an attorney, try to minimize editorializing, like, you know, saying that something is sad or whatever. That's the witness's job. When you're a witness, try not to critique the attorney's question as irrelevant or remarking on who bears the burden of proof in a case. I've been a witness in mock trial cases. I've definitely paused before answering a question to see if my attorney would object to it. But if they don't, the witness can't. But that's my only note. Other than that, great work, very long day, very hard work on all of your parts, and good luck in the future. And I hope to see many of you at a law school moot court or mock trial at some point in the future.
Yeah, to second Andrew, you all did a great job. You clearly know the facts of your case and you put a lot of work into it. My only comment moving forward would be to suggest practicing impeachment procedure. When you're a witness and someone asks you a question and you know it's in a statement you've made before, you don't need to acknowledge the statement. It gives the attorney time to practice impeaching you based off that statement. Other than that, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of go off what was just said. I think if first of all, if you're an attorney and you see that your witness is kind of struggling to answer a question because they think that it probably shouldn't be allowed, that's your opportunity to step in and object. I think that's it's like you said before, it's not the witness's job, it's the attorney's job to step in and make sure that your witness is not having to answer questions that they don't have to have. The other thing that I would say is on your cross-examinations, that's your opportunity to be adversarial. You want to make sure that what you're saying in your cross-examinations are questions and that the witnesses know that what you're asking and whether or not it's a yes or no question. Otherwise, if you're just kind of making statements and expecting them to respond, that's what you're doing. You're inviting a response, and that's not what you want in a cross-examination. You want to prove your own point. So if you can kind of force them into a yes or no question versus making a statement, that's going to be a little bit better for you. And then the last thing that I just wanted to touch on was the theme. I feel like some of you just kind of lost track of the theme, especially between your opening and closing arguments. It seemed like the defense, they started with who were you in high school, which I think is a decent theme. But then they moved to the story, and they also had the theme of motive as well. So I think you kind of want to stick to one theme and keep it kind of consistent throughout all your spots.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to add that hasn't been said, both in terms of improvement or things that you guys did well. So, I mean, just be proud. Today was a long day. Be proud of all the work that you guys have put in, and just good luck in the future rounds that you guys do.
Is that all the scores?